The reason is because, okay, it should come in now. All right, so once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening for Melo HaGoyim live streaming from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so as we are about to start, so thank you one and all. Thank you one and all. And so let's go ahead and get this up and going. All right, so we're going to bring in our message for this evening. And so the topic is salvation, part 5. And we're going to talk a great deal about what it's not, but we're going to kind of remind you of some things that we've already gone through. And so once again, if you like to be a blessing to our ministry, just go out to our webpage. You can see it up there in the right-hand corner, Melo HaGoyim .org. Just add the .org on that. You can go out to our website. From the website, you can choose donation, the button, and from there you can be a blessing to the ministry. But however, we thank you one and all for tuning in and taking part in such a magnificent time in history. And so as we go through, let's go and bring in our topic for this evening as we open up with prayer. Yahweh, Heavenly Father, we praise you. We honor you. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your love that you have given to us, Father. And I just pray at this time that, Father, you lead and I'll follow. You speak and I will open my mouth. Father, you tell me what to say and I will say it. So I just say thank you, Father, for those who are hearing at this time, Father. And bless each of us that we are hearers and doers, not just hearers of the word, but doers also. And we will continue to give you the praise in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Yahweh, our creator. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So this evening I have another exciting teaching for you, and it is called Salvation Part 5. And over the past few teachings, I've been teaching on salvation. And so we're going to look at what it's not. So let's kind of move in. Okay, I think what I just did was close it out. There we go. Bringing it back. And still having to get used to the controls. All right, so what it's not. It's going to be more of our focus this evening. Let's open up with Yeshua being the incarnate word. Let's look at Bereshit, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And of course, I'm going to give a few verses from different locations of the scriptures. And we're just going to lay a foundation here. Verse 15, Bereshit, Genesis chapter 3. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. Right here, we know that this is speaking concerning Hasatan, who's in the garden. We have the man Yahweh created, Adam, Hava, the female, and Hasatan. At this point, man has now fallen, and Yahweh is speaking to Hasatan, and he's speaking concerning who else but Yeshua. When he says he, so the he here, the pronoun is Yeshua. Long before he came into the earth in the flesh in this form. He shall crush your head. And he says, but you shall crush his heel. Well, how do you crush the heel? By him stepping on your head. So Proverbs chapter 10, verse 11 and or through 14. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wrong. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all transgressions. Wisdom is found on the lips of him who has understanding, but a rod is for the back of him who lacks heart. The wise treasure up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool is near ruin. So let's look at this. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Now, of course, we can definitely see that as Yeshua, but the next part, but violence cover the mouth of the wrong. So that's anyone who's wrong in so doing, as in intentional sins, because hatred stirs up strife. Again, Yeshua, love covers all transgressions. And who's the only one that can cover our transgressions but Yeshua? So he is the epitome of love. Wisdom is found on the lips of him who has understanding. So there's two spirits of Elohim, wisdom, understanding. Go to Isaiah chapter 11 and you will read there, verse 1, 7 spirits of Yahweh. But a rod is for the back of him who lacks heart. The wise, there's another spirit of Elohim, treasures up knowledge. Right here, we should be able to remember this was in the garden as well, but that also is another spirit, another of the 7 spirits. So right there, we just named 4 of the 7 spirits. But the mouth of a fool is near ruin. So right in just this one phrase, or verses 11 through 14, what you can see is both the foolish and the wise of Matthew 25. Psalms 110, verse 6. He judges among the nations. He shall fill the nations with dead bodies, but shall crush the head over the mighty earth. And so that should remind us what was promised in the not wilderness, but in the very beginning, with the 3 entities in the garden and the promise of his coming. And so this again is a reminder that he shall crush his head. And so this is going to be fulfilled as Yeshua returns. And it says, he shall fill the earth with dead bodies. And so I want you to be reminded here of COVID-19, what's taking place all over the earth. Matthew 1 and 21. And she shall give birth to a son, and you shall call his name Yeshua, for he shall save his people from their sins. And so this is speaking of Yeshua's first entrance, or not entrance, but his first coming into the earth as man. And so he's being born, and the promise is given to Miriam, who is receiving the word that became flesh. James chapter 5, verse 20. Let him know that he who turns a sinner from the straying of his way shall save a life from death and cover a great number of sins. And so right here, I want to point out that this is not only Yeshua speaking, well, this is James, but this is not only Yeshua. Anyone who saves a life, you save them from death. And you can also save them from a great number of sins when we move to the spiritual implication, whereas if you give a word to someone and they become doers of the word as well as hearers of the word, then that person's soul have been saved from a death that is eternal, because they believed and they kept the commandments. And so this is what it takes. We'll go through that, I promise, in a little more in depth when it comes to what does it mean to be saved. And I'm going to go ahead and put a message out there. Shalom to all. All right. Just want to say thank you for everyone who comes in either now or later. For those of you who have already come in, thank you so much. It is such an honor for you to be on with us this evening. So let's continue. All right, one thing I do have to remember as I move through, my page will jump and I have to restart it. So here we go. So let's look at salvation as it is defined. And so I just want to say here that I've already covered this each time I spoke and taught on salvation, but I want to bring it in so that we're always up on our definition that we're using for this evening. So what is salvation? Preservation or deliverance from harm, ruin, or loss. Let's think about COVID-19. That would definitely be harm to one's body. Shalom, Ellen. Thank you so much for being with us. That would definitely be ruin for people who are overcome by the virus. What about the hurricanes that's going on right now? The earthquakes that are taking place. Ruin, loss. Let's look at the synonyms. Lifeline, preservation, conservation, means of escape. So the means of escape, let's look at a less expression of salvation, which is when someone needs help. In previous teachings, I went through sections of help. What is help? When someone needs medical attention, you need help. You need an operation, you need correction, some type of physical correction of your body, whether you're going to any type of physician who knows, the body. What about mental? So you need help. And so we know to call for help, or someone in our family can recognize that my relative is in need of what? Help. And so they can reach out to that relative or to other relatives to rally around that relative to say, Rabbi needs help, so we need to make sure that we bring this to his attention. So that's a lesser form of salvation. And the reason I bring this up, some people may be a little bit hesitant when it comes to salvation, whether it's of your belief and or of your non-belief. Wherever you are in your walk, in your spiritual walk, and there's others who are not of this walk, they have other gods, and so they have other beliefs. And so everyone will be under the same scrutiny of Yahweh's word as of the Torah. I'll go into that in a few minutes, but let's continue. Let's look at the source or means of being saved from harm, ruin, or loss. Let's go to a theological definition: deliverance from sin and its consequences. That's huge right there, because now we're speaking we're speaking spiritual, but it should also be physical as well as spiritual. But we'll look at that, even that, a little more in a few minutes. Belief by Christians to be brought about by faith in Christ, the Christian's gospel of salvation for all mankind. And here's something that I added this teaching. And of course, these are definitions that I went out to make sure that it's something that we all, it doesn't matter your walk, whether this is civil or religious, that we all can grasp, and we all can say, whether from the spiritual walk or the natural walk of just mankind trying to live. Salvation is the state of being saved or protection from harm or a dire situation in religion and theological or theology. Salvation generally refers to the deliverance of the soul from sin and its consequences. So I want you to just really think about that state of being saved from harm. Now, that can be bodily harm or your soul, which can also be spiritually harmed. So what I want to bring more into focus is salvation in two parts. And I know based on our spiritual upbringing or our spiritual experiences coming from the traditional religious background, such as Christianity, whether you are Baptist, holiness, or most forms of the gospel, they pretty much focus on the spiritual being and all else is taken care of. But what I want to do is I'm going to focus on two aspects that they're not necessarily simultaneous. In a sense, yes, but in our focus for tonight, I think we need to make sure that the scriptures where it says where a tree lies, where a tree falls, it lies. And so right there, our physical being first and then our spiritual being. So in other words, what does it matter for a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? It's so powerful right here, because if you don't align your physical being and your spiritual being together, how is it that your spiritual being is going to gain heaven eternally? And this is the mistake that is often, very often made in traditional gospel teaching. When a person dies, no matter how religious they are, no matter how dogmatic or how secular they are, if they have given enough money, the preachers will put them in heaven. And so that's not a good thing, because everyone died thinking they automatically get to heaven, when the scripture says where a tree falls, it lies. So if you fell outside of the covenant of Yahweh, the love of Yeshua, then that is a false assumption that you will gain heaven. So it's my job this evening to help us to see into this. So let's look at the spiritual being. Did I give the physical being? Let me go ahead and read that. Saved from the consequences or the consequence of sin, generational sin, mental or even bodily harm. So looking at our spiritual being, to be with Yahweh beyond the grave eternally. So this is why Yeshua came. that we shall be wherever he is. And this is why he died, that wherever he is, we too can be eternally saved from eternal separation from Yahweh. So as we move on through this, let's look at the flying scroll and how it will be implemented. So let's look at the prophet. Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1 through 4. And I lifted up my eyes again and looked and saw a flying scroll. And he said to me, what do you see? And I answered, and I see a flying scroll, 20 cubits long, 10 cubits wide. And he said to me, this is the curse that goes forth over the face of all the earth. Everyone who is stealing shall go on unpunished on one side, according to it. And everyone who has sworn falsely shall go unpunished on the other side, according to it. I shall send it out, declares Yahweh of hosts, and it shall come into the house of the thief and the house of the one who shall swear falsely by my name, and it shall remain in the midst of his house and shall consume it, both its timber and stone. So we got a little bit that we need to unpack here. We need to look at what is the flying scroll? And who is this being spoken to and who's speaking? Who's speaking is Yahweh. Who is being spoken to is Zechariah. Zechariah is being held up between the earth and he sees the flying scroll. The earth and the heavens, he sees the flying scroll, just as Ezekiel. We'll get to him in a moment. What's on this flying scroll? Well, whatever it is, according to what it says, this is the curse that goes forth over the face of all the earth. Well, 1/3 of the earth, all the earth. 1/2 of the earth, all the earth. So you mean, is this? Yes, I do. This is the scroll of which Moshe wrote down, gave it to the priest, and what did he write? He wrote from the stones, the covenant at Mount Sinai, as he was getting ready to be gathered up, gave it to the priest, and from there, the priest would transfer this to generation or from generation to generation, scrolls, copies. The kings would have to write their own copies as well. And so this is both the blessings and the curses on this scroll. And so this is what goes into everyone's home, and it is to stay there to judge all houses, all people, all nations, all and every person, head by head, family by family, culture by culture. Everyone is being judged by what's in it. So let me explain this. There's a test coming that some people are not ready for because they refuse to open up the manual. Now, you have been given the manual hundreds and thousands of years prior. But even to this day, many people teach we're no longer under the laws of Moses. Well, what you think this is? But the commandments the blessings and the curses that will judge all people and all nations. Now let's look at the next part where it says, everyone who is stealing. Well, who's stealing? Well, they go on one side unpunished. Let's look at the other side. Everyone who has sworn falsely shall go unpunished on the other side. So one side we have those who are thieving, stealing. Here's a question. Do you think the one who's swearing falsely in the name of Yahweh are the thieves? Pretty much they don't do that. They pretty much live by their means. They live by their thoughts. And this is, whether they're secular or of another god or whatever. This is many people in society, because many people who are deceived into believing that we are no longer under the law. And so this is where he says, shall go on one side. So let's look at the other side that is swearing falsely. Would this not be the religious teachers? Those who say, I've been sent, but Yahweh said, you just went. I didn't send you. You've been swearing falsely. This is the false prophets. Those who have been teaching prosperity, Pentecostalism, charismatic. And so, yes, I know that I'm probably offending a lot of people, but that's fine. But if this in any way snatches you from the thought of not having to do anything, then it's worth it. So I hope that what I'm saying now has some relevance that make you go back and look and study what I'm saying. And if you want to contact me to refute anything I'm saying, that's fine. But I don't want your emotions. Give me scriptures. And anyone who says we're no longer under the law, show it to me in the scriptures or keep it to yourself. Now, I'm just being real with that. If you can't prove it, we have no conversation. But now, ask me if I can prove that we are under the law of Moses, which is not the law of Moses, it's God's law. I'm the same, I change not. So when he says, I'm sending it out to all nations, all people, it's going to remain in their home until it consumes timber and stone. That's exactly what it's going to do. Let's continue to move. So now let's begin to look at Ezekiel and what salvation is not. Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face towards the mountains of Israel and prophesy against them. So right here, this is a prophecy against the mountains. Yes, even the land itself. Remember when sin happened in the garden, where did it sink down into the land, right? So right here, prophesy against even the mountains. Verse 4 and 5. And your slaughter places shall be ruined. Your sun pillars shall be broken in pieces. And I shall make your slain fall in front of your idols, and lay your corpses of the children of Israel in front of their idols, and scatter your bones all around your slaughter places. So this is Yahweh as we continue in chapter 6. And notice that I am skipping some verses, so I'm not giving everything, and I'll continue to do that. So Yahweh is now angry with Israel in their adulterous hearts. because they have been led astray. And this is the time of the coming up to the Babylonian captivity, the exilic community of Israel. The northern kingdom, over 130 plus years, 135 years to be exact, maybe 136 years. At this point, they are about to go into exile. They are about to be exiled, but the northern kingdom have been already taken by the Assyrians or Assyria. So let's look at verses 7 through 9. And the slain shall fall in your midst, and you shall know that I am Yahweh. But I shall leave a remnant, in that some of you shall escape the sword among the nations, when I scatter you through the lands. And those of you who escape shall remember me among the nations where they have been taken captive. Because I, who's speaking? Who's the I here? You're right, Yahweh. Because I have been broken by their adulterous hearts, which has turned away from me, and by their eyes, which hoard after their idols. And they shall loathe themselves for the evils which they have done in all their abominations. Have you ever imagined that you can break Yahweh's heart? And I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, Israel did that. But not only Israel, in the inception, and as we know Israel in the land, because remember, even in the wilderness, they tried Yahweh 10 times. But even when they went into the land, Moshe warned them and said, your children's children's children will be spewed out of the land, because you will do the abominable or the abomination against Yahweh. And so right here, Yahweh is fed up, and he's getting ready to send King Nebuchadnezzar in to take Israel. And there were 3 separate occasions where they went in before the third time, 2 previously, and then the third time they wiped it completely out, and the temple was burned. So they went out after other mighty ones, and we're going to take a closer look at that. Shalom, Minister Carter. Shalom. Thank you for joining us this evening. And so let's begin to look at some of the images of today. Now, not only are we experiencing COVID-19, but the nation in the West Coast is experiencing a lot of heat, a lot of fire. Now, I'm just going to be a straight shooter on this. We are in judgment. We are in a major portion of the judgment. And so many people are being judged, their homes being burnt down. And don't fool yourself into believing that these are many people who don't believe that they are saved. But these are many people, as well as general society. Everyone is going through this judgment. I guarantee you, if you take a poll of some of the people, and I'll explain what you're looking at. 2 different images. I guarantee you, if you take a poll of believers who survived the fire, their houses burned, maybe even lost a loved one or lost someone, if you ask them, they will tell you that they are saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost and fire. And so this is where I've been telling you that we have to get a better perspective on salvation. And so let me go ahead and continue. I don't want to run out of time. I want to make sure that I leave some time to answer any questions. And if there are any questions, please, for this whole teaching, you can put it in the chat and I will definitely get to you. If not by the end, until the end, that is, I will definitely get back to you because I can see in real time what is being asked or spoken. On our left-hand side, this is mountainous regions in California, LA, or the West Coast, where you can see ambers, fires, housing, just mountainous regions that all of this lit up stuff is fire. If you can see behind it, smoke and a big fire stretching up over the mountain. But what is this that you see down on the road? But people, why does it look like they're riding right to the fire? No, they're trying to escape the fire. The fire is behind them. The fire is in front of them. The fire is all around, but there is a road of escape. And even if not for a witness, Yahweh is allowing some people to escape. You can see a fire coming a long ways off. And so you can have time to escape it. But some people didn't have time to escape. You can look at the numbers of those who died. These numbers are still coming in. On our right, this is only a few days old, but already it is old. And this image of fires have grown even into Nevada, Las Vegas, Arizona, Oregon in a big way. And I think even over to Idaho, Utah. So a lot of these states have spread into the fires, but not every inch. Some people die, some people live. And so, as I've already said, you can see a fire coming a long way. There's warnings out there. So what about Yeshua? If he's a consuming fire, yes, you should be able to see him coming. And the problem is many people have been so deceived into believing that the law is no more relevant. And I just showed you the flying scroll. Everyone will go unpunished until the time of reaping. Let's continue. Here's another look at some of the closer look. Yes, Rabbis. Now that's what I call Yahweh's burning. Oh, yes. What you see is the shopping areas. You see the parking deck for the cars. But look, no cars. Looks like a ghost city there. If you look up at the fitness center, you can also, I see cars parked up there. And so I believe that they're gonna get out of there as well. Because what's over the ridge of the mountain? Fire. Guess which way it's coming? Down the mountain. What do you see along the mountain? These lights are homes. Lights are on because the fire has not reached there yet. So guess where the fire is going? To the homes. Sure, you're right. And so many people's homes will be burned. And there will be also a lot that may survive. You check it out. Here's another image and a closer image of both the rich and poor. So I wanted to bring in this image, and we're going to get back to the Torah or the word. I wanted to make sure that I bring in some images of both rich and poor, not to say that anyone who lives in either of these homes are rich and famous or poor and unknown. But as it relates to people and ordinary people, whether you're rich and famous or you're just living in California, it makes no difference. Two different images, two different areas. On our left, I would say this is the home of a person who is well-to-do, more than likely, but I wouldn't say that this person is rich, because this is definitely not, in my viewpoint, a mansion. We'll talk about that in just a moment when we get to our right-hand side. But this appears to be the sign of a person's home who is doing well for themselves. And we know that California is a rich man's state. And so if you live in California, you have to do pretty well. In other words, teachers, I know a lot of the teachers' salaries, state-wise. And so in California, just going back to some of the documentaries that I've seen what is called the working poor. And so among them were teachers who I know the salary was about $85,000 per year annually. And from some of the witnesses, living in their cars because they didn't make enough to live or stay stable in a home. So in other words, this home here, just guessing from my knowledge of different states and their finances, living or the cost of living, this house will very easily be, and I'm going to give it a very moderate number, $250,000 to $750,000, $250,000 to about $750,000. Okay, that could be easily this range, and I wanted to give it a wide range. We're not talking $100,000. That's not this area here. But let's go to the right-hand side. Just like the left-hand side, the house is burning. On the right-hand side, this would be some of your more affluent neighborhoods where it appears that these are mansions. Mansions burning. They burn also. And so you can see several houses here. I see very well 3, 4 different locations, and this one may be 4. These 2 here may be of 1. It's just stretched out. But very easily, these homes would go for a few $1 million. And so I would say this is more of your affluent society where their homes are going to start at $1, $2, and $3 million and on up. So let's continue to move through. Your poor homes will burn just like your rich homes. My point. All right, so let's look at Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. Yeshua, a consuming fire. And it came to be in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th of the new moon, or 5th day of that month, as I sat in my house with the elders of Yehuda, Jerusalem, Judah, sitting before me, that the hand of the master Yahweh fell upon me there. And I looked and saw a likeness like the appearance of fire from his waist and down. The appearance was like fire. And from his waist and upwards, the appearance of brightness like glowing metal. So who is this but Yeshua? And when was this? So this is Ezekiel. Now we're speaking from the 6th year of the Babylonian captivity, the 6th month, and the 5th day. So this is when Babylon has now taken Jerusalem. Before we were reading from Zechariah, it was going to happen. Now we're looking at Ezekiel. He went in part of that also, and I think he was taken in the first wave that was taken. And so Ezekiel is telling us, he's given us a timeline in the 6th year, 6th month, and 5th day. And so that should almost remind you of Revelation chapter 13, 666. And so what this right away gives me is the Aleph and Tav. There's a theme that's going on here. Yahweh is what? The Aleph and Tav. Yeshua is what? The Aleph and Tav. The beginning and the end. I don't ever think of the Greek on that. My mind stayed more focused on the Hebrew, and I'm stalling just a little bit to think of the Greek, and I really can't think of it. But anyway, I'm not going to hold us captive there. But anyway, so what does 666 remind you of what Revelation chapter 13, when Hasatan is spoken of? Not to give him any play here, but there's a reference here for a reason. But who is actually being spoken of? Not Hasatan, but the Aleph and Tav, the beginning and the end. Why Babylon? Babylon, because here is now the whole kingdom of Israel, who has now been exiled to the nations. At this point, the southern kingdom has now been exiled. And so, Minister CC, that is Aleph, Alpha and Omega. Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister CC. Alpha and Omega. I had to struggle with that Alpha because it looks close to the Aleph. All right, so thank you so much. So right here, my mind, when I first started reading it, of course, some years ago, and even as I was preparing this teaching, it went to 665, and it kept me in line, but I was 660. Oh man, that's not 6. But anyway, 665, the Aleph. So Babylon is the beginning of the whole kingdom of Israel has now been taken into captivity, where the only ones that will come back from this will be your southern kingdom. And so who do they see here? Here's the description that Ezekiel gives us. From his waist and down, the appearance was like fire. So that should remind us what? Revelation. His legs are as columns of fire, the Aleph. And from his waist upwards, the brightness like glowing metal. And if you ever seen liquefied gold, iron, molten rock, such as volcano that have spewed out, that's what it looks like. Reminds you of the fire, right, in the bush, but the bush was not consumed. Here is Ezekiel, who is being lifted up by a lock of his hair, suspended between the heavens and the earth. And this is what he sees, and he describes Yeshua as a man, but the image of Yahweh. Let's go to the next verse 2. And he stretched out the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my hair. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heavens and brought me in visions of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the north gate of the inner court, where the seat of the image of jealousy was, which causes jealousy. And see, the esteem of the Elohim of Israel was there, like the vision that I saw in the plain. So here's Ezekiel telling us about Yeshua, whom he doesn't know as Yeshua, but he knows him as Elohim, but he sees the image of Elohim. So the invisible image, the deity, is Yahweh, the invisible God, and the only wise God. But the visible deity is Yeshua, Yahweh incarnate. So he stretched out the form of a hand. So we have to know that again is the image of the burning fire that did not consume man or Ezekiel. Let's take another look at what is taking place. This is today. When you turn on the news, look at California. And I'm not trying to only focus on California, but this is what's happening today. What we have on one coast of the United States is burning fire. But on the East Coast, we have flooding waters. And so just imagine that if the waters and the hurricanes, if they were over on the West Coast, it would defeat the purpose. What is the purpose? To bring judgment to the United States. So this is fire and water. The United States is going through a judgment. I'm just trying to be very real with you. And so if the hurricane was in the West Coast, it would blow the fires out, or vice versa. The fires would put the water, the hurricanes out. So Yahweh is moving in harmony with himself. One side is fire, the other side is water. And he is very strategic on all sides as to where his children are. So on the left-hand side, let's look at this home that I would say is a very wealthy home. Look at the trees and the placement of the parking lot of the home. Look at the home, and up on top could be a servant's quarters or guest quarters. but everything here is going to burn down if they don't soon put this fire out. But look in the background. There's a lot of fire that's going on. So I don't know that they will make it to this house in time. Let's go to the right-hand side. Here's the fireman who's at the home of someone's house. I don't know whether this is rich or poor or middle class. I just know it's a fire that has no discrimination. But oh, look at this man. This is probably his home. But what is that he have on his face? Oh, he has on a mask. Do you think that's because of the fire and fire alone? I don't think that's only because of the fire. I think there's a double thing that's going on here. And so there's a fire taking place, plus there's COVID-19. I didn't do a lot of images to bring in COVID, so this would probably be the only one that you will see. But I wanted to make sure that I mention it and show you that these are things that's going on through all the earth. I didn't bring in a lot of the other nations or other countries, but I think we can see and know from this point of view, all nations are going through the virus, schools, universities, homes, people, period. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 9 through 12, Israel's idolatrous heart. And he said to me, go in and see the evil abominations which they are doing there. And I went in and looked and saw all kinds of creeping creatures, abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel carved all around on the walls. And facing them stood 70 men of the elders of the house of Israel. And in their midst stood Yaazaniah, son of Shaphan. Each one had a censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the dark? Each one in the room of his idols. For they say, Yahweh does not see us. Yahweh has forsaken the land. Now remember, with Zechariah, this was the warning that it was coming. Remember with Ezekiel is taken now back to Jerusalem, and he's viewing them so that he can see why he and others have been exiled to Babylon, and those who have been left there will also be exiled to Babylon. And so I need for you to remember the number 70 elders. This is both symbolic and natural. Symbolic in the number of 70 because there's so much going on with the number 7. Your Shemitah year times 10 gives you 70. The 70 years of Daniel, so many things. And I'm not going to go through that now because I need for us to stay focused on the salvation and helping us to understand from the viewpoint of Yahweh and not traditions of Pentecostalism nor Azusa Street. Remember, I taught on that. Nor the charismatic teachings of today. And so there's so much. Checking my time to make sure that I have a few minutes left. So why the idols of the house of Israel. So these 70 men are not just the elders or the older of Israel, but they are the leaders and the seniors of Israel who knows better than to practice idolatry. Your seniors should know to teach your younger generation. But here they are, believing that Yahweh has abandoned them. Why do they believe that Yahweh has abandoned them? Because Nebuchadnezzar has come in and taken at least 1 or 2 trips, and they are getting ready to go next. So they believe that Yahweh has abandoned them, and so they are doing what they saw in the wilderness when they thought Yahweh had abandoned them. Remember the 40 days 2 times. Remember how they, in their mind, was going back to Mizraim, and they built the golden calf. Remember how they also were thirsty, and they wanted to go back to Mizraim. Remember how they got some water, and then they were hungry for meat, and they wanted to kill Moshe and Aaron because they wanted to go back to Egypt, Mizraim. So here it is being played out once again. And please don't think, we can point a finger at them, because I'm going to get to our generation in just a few minutes. So let's continue to move forward. Again, I want to point out Israel breaking the covenant and breaking the heart of Yahweh. Have you ever, according to Ezekiel chapter 6, imagined that you can break the heart of Yahweh? So I ask, have you broke his heart? I know I have. Idolatry. To your own self be true. I was raised in idolatry, and I have repented for those things. And I have to be careful when I go into this, because it always drives me to tears, because truly my heart, yes, I gotta go. I gotta move. Truly my heart is toward Yahweh and to keep his commandments. That's all I'm going to say on that. And so to keep from getting too misty on this, I want to bring us back to what's going on right now today. Do you think this is not because of idolatrous hearts? What do you see? Israel, what is it that you see out there? Those of you who say you love Yahweh, what is it that you see? Californians, what is it that you are experiencing? What is it that you see right now? What is it that you are trying to escape? Look at the cars at the bottom of the mountains. Look at the mountains on fire. And what does the scripture say? Pray that the mountains are cast into the sea. What does that mean? That the mountains are cast into the sea. Well, what is the sea, first of all? The sea is the groups of people. The many different groups of people. You are Israel, but you're walking in disobedience. Many of you choose to ignore his commandments, yet say, I love God. Many of you choose to walk in disobedience and choose to say, I am innocent. But this fire is going down the mountain. And don't believe for a second there's no houses on those mountains. There's houses on the mountains as well. And notice that the mountains are on fire. But on the bottom of the mountain, people are escaping. And remember, we looked at it before, and it looks like they were going to the fire. No, they're trying to escape the fire because it's in front of them, it's behind them, it's on the side of them, and they're trying to escape. Let's look at the right-hand side. There's no doubt that this is a rich home, well-to-do, influential maybe, maybe not. But this person seemed to be of wealth, but that home is burning just like a poor man's home would burn. So each person has to walk this out. And unless you walk this out, whether judgment catches you now or later, we all are going through judgment. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 13 through 18, Yahweh reveals. And he said to me, you are to see still greater abominations which they are doing. And he brought me to the door of the north gate of the house of Yahweh. And I saw women sitting there, weeping for Tammuz. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? You are to see still greater abominations than these. Wait a minute. The women of Israel sitting around gathered together. So you had the 70 elders in their room with their idols saying, Yahweh can't see me. He has left us. He has forsaken us. And they're praying to their idols to save us. And here's the women, not just women of the elders, but women of Israel. That's what it tells us. Weeping for Tammuz. Who is Tammuz? Another god. Praying to be saved from what has taken place. And he says, you're going to see even a greater abomination. So let's continue. And he brought me into the inner court of the house of Yahweh there at the door of the Hekal of Yahweh. So now, not only is he looking at the homes, but now he's at the door of the temple of the house of Yahweh, beside the porch and the slaughter place, where were about 25 men with their backs toward the Hekal or temple of Yahweh, and their faces toward the east. And they were bowing themselves to eastward to the sun. Wow. What do you mean by that, Rabbi? Well, let's continue to look at it. So they're at the temple. Ezekiel is now being shown at the doorway of the temple, and he sees now 25 elders, and these are your leaders. Again, 25 men with their backs towards the Hekal or the temple, and so their backs towards the temple and their faces towards the east. What comes up in the east? You're right, the sun. So is this an image of Israel praying towards the sun? The abomination of Israel, the abomination. Wait, Yahweh created the sun. Yes, he did. He created the sun. But do not be awed by the images of heaven, Yahweh says. Right? The second point says, and he said to me, have you seen, O son of man, is it a small matter to the house of Yehuda So this is the house of Jews or Judah, to do the abominations which they have done here, for they have filled the land with violence and turned back to provoke me. And see, they are putting the branch to my nose. Therefore, I shall indeed deal in wrath. My eyes shall not pardon, nor would I spare. And they shall cry in my ears with a loud voice, but I shall not hear them. So what is this? What abomination is this? If their backs is towards the temple, the altar of Yahweh, then they're facing the sun. This must be Easter. And I'm going to show you. So this is still a greater abomination than the daughters weeping for a god, another god, the women, or the men standing with their backs, standing between the porch and the temple itself with their backs, with their backs towards the temple and standing facing the sun, committing adultery against Yahweh, because Israel went into a marriage at Mount Sinai. That's the adulterous affair that they are having with another god. So let's continue. Here's an image that I want you to look at very carefully. And I put this little collage, it's only 3 different images, all from different times that I collected. You can see in the top left-hand corner a title, Stonehenge Spring Vernal Equinox Sunrise Tour of 2019. So this is just over 1 year ago, not 2020, but 2019, and advertising for a gathering in Westminster, England, where they gather every year during the equinox, spring equinox, as well as the summer equinox, twice a year to celebrate the seasonal change. And so what you see is Stonehenge that gives a signal that when it gives a perfectly aligned ray from the sun through the aligned stones, they know that it is the annual season or seasonal change. The sun, the earth has gone around the sun one complete revolution, and the new year begins, and this is where they plan the Easter celebration. And if you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, the people have gathered to see this phenomenon that takes place in other countries like Africa and Mexico. What you see is the day of no shadow. So when they observe the day of no shadow, as well as in Jerusalem, they use a sundial, an actual sundial that produces a shadow when the sun is equally 12 hours day, 12 hours night. Now, really never there is exactly 12 hours, but it can be very, very close, like 12 hours and 50 minutes, 55 minutes, 40 minutes, 46 minutes. A couple of years ago, I saw when it got to 11 hours, 46 minutes, and when you see it the next day, because you have its peak once a day, for a 24-hour period, it goes through the cycles. And so the next day is either going to be less or more. So once it becomes more, you know that you have already had the peak. And so if it's more than in the year that I was able to look at it, 11 hours and 46 minutes, the next day was more than that. It had went over 12 hours. And so now you're moving towards the longest day, which is your summer solstice, right? Okay, so anyway, you have different countries that have a measure of the vernal equinox. So on our right-hand side, you might see something that looks familiar. You see what looks like a processional that's either going to or away from Stonehenge. Whether they're going to circle back or not, I don't know. I don't know what time of day this is. It looks like the sun is up, just as I was thinking about it, looking at the reflection in the picture. I'm seeing that this has to be after, because looking down here at the glow and the height of the glow, that tells me that the sun is rising further up into the sky, the process of the 24-hour period. And these people are walking away. They go from the time of darkness. If you look back at and I'm putting it together, if you look at our left, these people appear to be standing there somewhat right after sunrise. This is a few minutes after sunrise. But on your right-hand side is even more light. And they're producing shadows now. And if you can see the shadows have now become enlarged. When this is completely aligned, when I say aligned, that the moment that the sun crests the horizon and that first beam come through Stonehenge, there is no shadow. But on the right-hand side, again, as you see, I'm putting this together, there is a good deal of shadow. So that tells me that the time has progressed greatly. All right, so I'm going to move on. But this is what Yahweh says is an abomination. The last point I want to make, what is this person? What is this person in this costume here? Is that Peter Rabbit? I think it could be. Whatever his name, it's definitely a rabbit's head, and we're going to continue to move. So let's look at Ezekiel chapter 9, checking my time. So I'm going to speed this up because I want to definitely try to get through the rest of this. I'm not far off. Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 1 through 5, 7 men, 7 trumpets. And so that's really me pointing out 7 bowls, 7 messengers, 7 angels, that is, and 7 trumpets. So if you are to go to Revelation chapter 6, it will start with 7 seals. And then Revelation chapter 12 talks about the seals and the trumpets and the messengers. Chapter 8. So let's go through verses 1 through 9. And he called out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, let the punishers of the city draw near, each with his weapon of destruction in his hand, and look, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north. each with his battle axe in his hand, and one man in their midst was clothed with linen, and had a writer's inkhorn at his side. And they came in and stood beside the bronze slaughter place altar, and the esteem of the Elohim of Israel went up from the cherubim, where it had been, to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, who had the writer's inkhorn at his side. And Yahweh said to him, pass on into the midst of the city, into the midst of Jerusalem, and you shall put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it. And to the others he said in my hearing, pass on into the city after him and strike. Do not let your eyes pardon nor spare. So who are the punishers? So this is Yahweh still speaking with Ezekiel as Yeshua, the man whose image from his waist up was burning fire, or fiery gold, not gold, but metal. From his waist down, his legs, columns of fire. So let the punishers draw near with his weapon to destroy. And so how many were there? 6. So why did I say 7 men? Because there are 6 men who are going to bring destruction on Babylon. And so this is prophetic of Babylon 2 ways. It's prophetic because Babylon is getting ready to fall for the 3rd time. And so remember, we looked at the 70, then he brought us back and we looked at the 25 and the women. And he said, you will see even greater abomination. And so this is 2 different prophecies. So Revelation, keep in mind Revelation, okay? And so as he bring in Revelation, these 6 men who actually have a 7th, who's the 7th one? One man in their midst was clothed with linen and had a writer's inkhorn. That's chapter 6. Chapter 6 of Revelation. What is chapter 6? The seal of Israel. Those who cry out against the abomination shall be saved. And this is what we are seeing. So this is why I spoke about the Aleph, and what we're getting ready to see is the Tav. And this man who is clothed in linen is a priest. Linen garments, and he is a scribe, the scribe of heaven. Like the Torah is given to the scribes, right? The priest, the Levites, by Moshe, when he left, he gave them a written copy and said, now you write this. And Yahweh said, I will put a song on Israel's heart, which will be in their DNA. Revelation chapter 14, they shall sing. So that's the Aleph, and the Tav is on its way. When Yeshua returns and gathers the 144,000. Revelation chapter 14, chapter 12, chapter 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So this man who's clothed with linen, What's his name? This is Enoch. Remember, Enoch never tasted death, but from this period, and I won't go into this very much at all, but remember, Enoch and Elijah must return. They must both die. These are the two witnesses that will die on the 1260th day of judgment for them. As they come back to the earth, the two prophets, we'll look more as to who they are, but they come back to judge the nations for 1260 days. So it says, and he called out to the man clothed with linen, who had the writer's inkhorn at his side, and Yahweh said to him, pass on into the midst of the city. What city? Jerusalem. So that means that it has not fallen yet totally, because it's still up. Into the midst of Jerusalem, and you shall put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh, the seal, and cry over the abominations that are done within it. And the others said to him, and the others, he said in my hearing, pass on. Who are the others? The 6 other men of destruction. Pass on into the city after him and strike. Do not let your eyes pardon nor forget. Verse 6 through 11, Yahweh's judgment. Kill to destruction old, young men, maidens, and children and women. So wait a minute. Children too, yes. But do not come near anyone whom is the mark. So who is the mark? Those who cry out against the abomination. In this day, that was the Aleph. In this day, it will be the Tav, those who cry out today against the abomination. And begin at my set apart place, the temple. That's why 2/3 were taken during the fall, and Babylon had taken those who survived off. So they began, and that's 1/3 that survived. So they began with the elders who were in front of the house, and he said to them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go out. And they went out and struck the city. What city? Jerusalem. And as they were striking them, it came to be that I alone was left. And I fell on my face and cried out and said, Master Yahweh, are you destroying all the remnant of Israel in pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem? And he said to me, the crookedness of the house of Israel and Yehuda, that's the whole house, is exceedingly great. And the land is filled with bloodshed, and the city filled with that which is warped. For they say, Yahweh has forsaken the land, and Yahweh is not seeing. But as for me, my eyes shall not pardon, nor would I spare. I shall recompense their deeds on their own heads. And see, the man clothed with linen who had the inkhorn at his side reported back and said, I have done as you commanded me. And what did he do? He put a sign on all who cried out against the abomination. So let the destruction begin. Aleph. So now Yehuda has now been taken. So here's the Tav. So now The two witnesses come back to witness against the nations. And so what we are seeing on the West Coast, fire burning exceedingly. East Coast, hurricanes coming in, twisters. Oh, wait a minute. Aleph and Tav. What was Elijah and Enoch taken up into heaven and translated? Because remember, flesh and blood does not go into heaven, right? So they were both translated. Enoch was 365, and then he was not, right? For he was taken. Elijah, he called for it to not rain until he's spoken. 3.5 years, right? 3.5 years. Oh, 1260. Yes, you got it. Aleph and Tav. Yahweh's judgment. Let's look at greater abomination. Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 1 through 5. Christmas, the abomination. Hear the word which Yahweh speaks to you, O house of Israel. Thus saith Yahweh, do not learn the way, got it right here, of the nations. King James says the heathens. And do not be awed by the signs of heaven, for the nations are awed by them, for the laws of these peoples are worthless. For one cuts a tree from the forest, work for the hands of a craftsman with a cutting tool. They beautify it with silver and gold. Deck the halls of folly, silver and gold. They strengthen it with nails and hammers so that it does not topple, fall over. They are like a rounded post, and they do not speak. They have to be carried because they do not walk. They have no legs. Do not be afraid of them, for they do no evil, nor is it in them to do any good. Why? Because they're not alive. They're false deities. These are gods that have been adopted not only from the heathens or the secular societies, but it also was adopted into Christianity. So what you saw during Ezekiel chapter 6 and the image I showed you at the spring equinox and then the summer equinox, and so we go to the winter solstice. And so what we have is a celebration of the seasons. And Yahweh says, do not learn the ways of the nations and do not be awed by the signs of heaven. What is the signs of heaven? Remember that first ray of the sun coming up, signaling the change of the season, the spring solstice or equinox, the spring equinox. For the nations are awed by them. So notice that there are very many people out there from different nations. For the laws of these people are worthless. So Yahweh says, and he gives us a description, they beautify them with silver and gold. And they don't speak. They have to be carried. So that means this is what? Some type of image, and we'll take a better look at that, some type of image that is not alive. And so as we continue, I'm bringing us to a close. Let's take a look at this. And I think you probably knew exactly what was coming. And these images, these are two different images, left and right. I like to try to squeeze as much as I can get in the smallest amount of space. But on my left, your left, you should see an image that captures more than one thought. First of all, what is he dressed in? Red attire with a belt, long coat. Oh, look, he has a long white beard. Who is this? Father Time. Oh, wait a minute. You don't know him as Father Time, right, today? Okay, you know him as who? Saint Nicholas, or not Saint Nicholas, but you know him as, let's get rid of that. Oh, that's not happening. Okay, there we go. Saint Nicholas, you see some symbols there. Saint Nicholas standing in front of a tree with another symbol of glad tidings, or you have the red poisonous tree, and I'm trying to remember the poinsettia on his rod there on his left, and then in his right hand another symbol of flowered tree or leaves. And so we have this tree there, and oh, look what's behind him. Oh, we don't know those as Yule trees, but Christmas trees have a very merry Yule. Well, that's what it started out to be. So even this generation would say, have a very Merry Christmas, but that's not the origin. Very merry Yule. This origin goes back for more than 3,500 years. Remember, Yeshua was born 2,000 years ago, right? So why didn't he celebrate this when he was here? And it was more than 1,000 years, well over 1,000 years before he was born in the earth. Why didn't he celebrate it? Because it's an abomination. It's a lie. Wait a minute. What's this I see around Father Time? What is this I see around his neck? The pentagram, the witch's symbol there, the five-pointed star, the goat. Wow, a lot of symbolism here. I'm going to keep on going. Let's look at our right-hand side. Yule magic and winter solstice celebration. www.whitewitchespearl.com. So this is from a witch's website today? Yes. These are updated images that I have shown you that celebrate them in their origin. But if you see Saint Nick in his origin, you can see the truth of who celebrates this. Witches. They celebrated Christmas or Yule long before Christians did. Christians only celebrated this since the mid-1700s. Mid-1700s. And so because of Queen Elizabeth, they thought it was popular and began to say, we can do it too. Changed the name of it little by little. Christians began to do it because it became the popular thing of the day. 1 John chapter 2, verse 1 through 6. I have a question for you. When the fire comes, are you saved? When the tornado comes, are you saved? When the earthquake comes, are you saved? And I'm speaking of your body, because if your body is saved, then it stands to say that your soul is saved. But remember, we're looking at body, soul, and spirit. If your body is not saved, then your spirit is not saved. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So if your body is not saved, then your spirit man is not saved. My little children, I write this to you so that you do not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an intercessor with the Father, Yeshua Messiah, a righteous one. And he himself is an atoning offering for our sins. So right here should trigger Leviticus chapter 23 for those who keep the commandments and understand the Sabbath and the holy days are synonymous with salvation. I'll say it to you like this. I am saved not because of the law. I am saved not by the law, but because of the law. And Rabbi says, begin in the North communities with the heathen nations. That is correct. That is correct. And so looking at the atonement, Yeshua being our atonement, let's continue and see how this breaks down to those who say they are saved. How do you know? And not for ours only, but also for all the world. So this is the flying scroll, Zechariah chapter 5, going into all homes, everyone being judged by the same exact scroll, the circumcision as well as non-circumcised, whether in heart or in flesh. And by this we know that we know him if we guard his commandments. So in other words, how do we know that we know him? If we guard his commandments. The one who says, I know him, and does not guard his commands is a liar. And the truth is not in him. Is a liar. Yeah, if you don't keep his commandments, he said, if you love me, do what? Keep my commandments. And so if you say, I keep his commandments, and you do not keep them, you're a liar. I'm sorry. Going straight shooter on you. And Messiah is not in you. He's the truth. But whoever guards his word, truly the love of Elohim hath been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. If you are in me, if you remain in me, I will remain in you. That's the covenant. Yeshua said, if you walk in me, I shall walk in you. If you keep my commandments, then I will keep you. The one who says he stays in him ought himself also to walk, even as he walked. So the one says, I walk in Messiah, should walk in what Messiah walked in. Leviticus 23, keeping the Sabbath. Leviticus chapter 11, eating correct. Don't touch what is an abomination. Don't eat pork. Don't eat shellfish. I want you to be saved, my brothers and sisters. Zechariah chapter 4, verse 8 through 14. Let's look at the two witnesses once again. And the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, the hand of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house, and his house shall complete it. And you shall know that Yahweh of hosts hath sent me to you. For who has despised the days of small beginnings? They shall rejoice when they see the plumb line in the hands of Zerubbabel. These seven are the eyes of Yahweh, which diligently seek throughout the earth. Then I responded and said to him, what are these two olive trees, one on the right of the lampstand and the other at its left? And I responded a second time and said to him, what are these two olive branches, which empty golden oil from themselves by means of the two golden pipes? Is he seeing something in the temple? In the heavens? And he said, and he answered me and said, do you not know what these are? And I said, no, my master. And he said, these are the two anointed ones who stand beside the master of all the earth. So let's break this down. So Zerubbabel, remember when they went to Jerusalem, and it took the first crew, Zerubbabel would have been among this group of people. And when they took this group of people, it took 70 years for them to come back. The priests, you have Ezra, all of them. So I can prove this to you scripturally, but it took 70 years in Babylon. And this is why Daniel is so important. Make sure you're making that connection to Daniel and the 70 weeks. Don't have time to go into it, but remember chapter 2 starts out with the king and his vision, and Babylon was the head of gold, right? So what he gave us was a timeline that stretched to the stone of stumbling topples the statue. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. I'm hoping that you're seeing the connections here. But the hand of Zerubbabel, who began it, that's the second temple, will see it to its completion. So they rejoice when they see the plumb line or the measuring line in the hand of Zerubbabel again. Why? Because he went back with them. These seven are the eyes of Yahweh, which diligently search throughout all the earth. What are the eyes? Again, go to Isaiah chapter 11 and you see the seven spirits. But here we're looking at the seven eyes. And what are the seven eyes? Also, what did Ezekiel see? The eyes, the wheels. On the wheels, they had eyes, right? So I'm hoping all of this is coming together. We have the prophets who are seeing different things. You saw with Daniel, you saw the same thing with Daniel, but we see the different animals, right? All of these are the same prophecies that is being spoken in different ways, but connecting us through history and the future. So when you see these different ones, here's a code. And I responded a second time, code. Aleph, 1, Tav, 2, code. So when these two come and their lives are in the earth, the Aleph and Tav, they are now judging the nations. This says, do you not know what these are? No, my master. And he said, these are the two anointed ones who stand beside the master of all the earth. What are they doing? They're bringing judgment throughout the nations. And I'm coming into my end here. I believe this is my last. We'll check it in just a moment. Let's look at Yeshua as the ark of the house, the architect, that is. Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. And a reed like a measuring rod, and this is what Ezekiel as well as Zechariah saw, was given to me, and the messenger stood saying, rise and measure the dwelling place of Elohim and the slaughter place and those worshiping in it, but cast out the court which is outside the dwelling place, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations. So now this is broader than just Babylon. This is the nations. So how does it mean given to the nations? And they shall trample the set apart city underfoot for 42 months, and I shall give unto my two witnesses. Okay, we just read about them. Zechariah chapter 4. And they shall prophesy 1,260 days clad in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands, there it is, that are standing before the Elohim of all the earth. And if anyone wishes to harm them, fire comes out from their mouth and consumes their enemies. And if anyone wishes to harm them, he has to be killed in that way. In other words, once people realize who's doing this, what's going on, and they begin to curse them, according to Revelation, it says they shall begin to curse them. And on that 1260th day, they shall lose. And check out Revelation chapter 12, next chapter. They shall lose this battle right here, next chapter, verse 1. They will die on the 1260th day, not 61st. What is this? Time, times, and half times. 1260 days. 42 months. So what comes after the two witnesses? 1290 days, Hasatan will defeat the two witnesses in that 1260th day, and he will reign. But the 1290th day, woe, 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 1290th day, Hasatan will be incarcerated for 1,000 years. That will begin once he is locked up after he defeats the two witnesses at the 1260th day mark, or the 3.5 year period. That's a huge teaching by itself, but just hang with me. Once he defeats them, he reigns, he and his demons. But what happens to Israel? Well, I'm glad you asked. Matthew chapter 25 takes position. Revelation chapter 12 takes position or place where the bride, the wise bride that is flown to her place in the wilderness, where Yahweh has a place prepared for her to escape Hasatan, who now has reigned for that period of time. And so if I said he has reigned for 1,000 years, I'm trying to remember. That's incorrect. Where he is put away for 1,000 years. That's the millennial reign. So that's the marriage of the bride. And so that's the seventh day, going into the seventh day. Again, remembering the 70th year having such major implementations. And you have that 7, when you take away the zeros, you're left with the 7, purely the 7, which is a picture of things to come, the year of release, the year, the Shemitah year, or the year of release. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 10 and 19. You'll look at the Song of Moses, as well as when. Also, it says, and if anyone wishes to harm them, fire comes out from their mouth and consumes their enemies. Now, at the 1260th, that will no longer be the case, because they will lose to Hasatan. And from that day forward, they will have to survive, because this is where Revelation chapter 12 talks about Michael, who then fights for Israel. And the 1290th day, Hasatan loses that battle. And the children of Israel has now been taken to a place of safety. But the foolish have been locked out, because they chose not to take an extra cruise of oil or a container of oil. What is that extra container of oil? Oil. Torah. What do you mean, Torah? Law. Again, I say, I am not saved by the Torah. I am not saved by the law. I am saved because of Torah. I am saved because of Yahweh's law. Yeshua is the incarnate word, and he is the word made flesh. And so it dwelt among us, and he will once again become Emmanuel, the word among us. And so if you're not ready, if you have not kept his commandments, you need to get ready. And so as we are at the end of this teaching for this evening, as we're at the end, I want to just bring your minds back to the salvation piece. Are you saved? How do you know? And if you're not saved, what are you waiting for? His commandments. His commandments is his plan of salvation. Start with the Sabbath. Go to Leviticus chapter 23. If you're still confused, email me, contact me. And if you have a question, even at this point, go ahead and put it in the chat room. I'll see it. I'll answer it. But other than that, we're going to call this a night. And so once again, I am Rabbi James Byers, thanking you for tuning in with us. For everyone who have come on live, thank you so much for coming and staying in. And for those of you who have endured this long teaching, let me just say thank you once again. We are in a critical time, and it's hard for me I can't do the touchy-feely good messages, because that's not where we are. We're wearing masks right now. And it's time to take the mask off. I'm not talking about for COVID-19. The touchy-feely good move, twinkle my ears, I can't do that. I've not, that's not been me. Although I'm not a fire and brimstone teacher, but I am a Torah teacher of truth. And so what you're going to get from me is Torah. If Torah is truth, then you're going to get truth. Torah is Yahweh. Torah is Yeshua. And that's exactly what you're going to get. So once again, from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I'm Rabbi James Byers. Thank you for tuning in with us. And we're going to go ahead and get ready to sign out for now, and just invite you each Thursday night to join in with us as we present another of our teachers. each Thursday night. And I think on Thursday night coming, we're going to be getting ready for the fall feast. So check back with us after the fall feast. That will be in October. But for now, I'd like to say thank you to one and all. Yahweh bless and shalom. We're going to, actually, I want to go out with how we started. So let me go back as I bring in I'm going to try to get it. Oh, well, you can reach us at melohagoyim.org. And so we're going to go ahead and end it right here. Shalom, shalom, shalom.